But one thing, no doubt, what is in Ibadat is also saying of prayers and reciting of Quran and doing munajat and dua, all those things. No doubt this is part of Ibadat, undoubtedly. And if you see the sirat of the Imams, they used to put a lot of time in this. This is the Imam, right? His wasiyat also was there of Ibadat. As far as his knowledge is concerned, that although Imam just lived 28 years of the age, very short life. He was born in 232 age, his shahada took place in 260 age. That gives you only about 28 years, right, of the age. But imagine the contribution which he has done. That because he was the last Imam, right, after that the 12th Imam would come, who in his childhood, at the age of 5, would go into Ghaibat al-Sughra, and then later on Ghaibat al-Kubra, right? So this was the only Imam who was openly available to his Shias. He required to train the Shias for the time when Shias would be, facing the Imam in the Ghaibat, right? So prepare the Shias for that. So although Imam was in prison and under house arrest, he trained the Shias in trying to just refer to the agents instead of coming to the Imam directly. So the concept of reaching Imam through the Naib started during the time of 11th Imam. 11th Imam started training the Shias. He had agents, he had scholars, in fact, who were trained, and the Shias were asked to send their questions, give their khums, give their hukuk to the Naibs, to these companions of the Imam. And then they would come to the Imam. Because of course in the prison only a few people were allowed. So for example, Uthman bin Sa'id and his son Muhammad bin Uthman, these are the first two Naibs, or Naib al-Khas of the 12th Imam, but they were also the Naib of the 11th Imam. They were also, in fact, the agents of 12th Imam. That is why you find of the 11th Imam. And that's why you find that Uthman bin Sa'id in Baghdad used to sell oil. His business was selling oil. This was just an excuse. Not that he wanted to do a business. The idea was that just by selling oil, people just can come to him, and as if that they are buying something, they would secretly give the money of homes to be reached to the Imam. That's how they used to do it. So Imam trained the Shias for the time when the Shias would not be able to see the Imam directly and they have to go through a Naib, through an agent. This is started during the 10th and 11th Imam's time. 11th Imam especially trained for this thing. And as far as knowledge is concerned, he was up to date about what was happening. There was a great scholar by the name Ishaq al-Kindi. Ishaq al-Kindi was a scholar and also considered as a philosopher of his time. Ishaq al-Kindi started writing a book. And the book was contradiction in the Quran. He would take an ayat of Quran and take another ayat of Quran and says, this ayat does not agree with this ayat. And then he would write that these two ayat do not agree, and then he put his note saying that these are contradictions. He started composing this thing. And not only that, he would also discuss with his students. One day, the students of Ishaq al-Kindi visited the Imam, 11th Imam. So after asking Imam whatever they had to ask, Imam now tells them that your teacher has informed you that he is composing a book with the title Contradiction in the Quran. Right? Why are you not doing anything? So they said, Yabna Rasulullah, how can we say anything to our teacher? He's our teacher. How can you even open our tongue and tell him that what you are doing is not right? Imam said, okay, if I teach you how to approach this thing, would you do that? They said, yes. Yabna Rasulullah, why not? So Imam gave them two things. He said, first of all, that the words which Ishaq al-Kindi has taken, those meanings of those ayat and words, he has just taken one meaning of those words. And by just confining one meaning of that word, he believes that another ayat contradicts. And Imam gave also examples of those ayat and everything. And they said, tell him that no, these words have so many meanings. It is rich in meaning. And because you have confined your meaning, because you understood only one meaning of this thing, and that is why you think there's contradiction. And the second point is just let them know that what in case if the author of the book tells you that the meaning of this thing is not what you think, then what would you say? If the author himself, because so often, for example, right, some shair, people who make poetry, those who compose poetry, They make lines of poetry, and after that we try to, for example, understand what he meant. But if he was sitting himself, maybe sometimes would say, you're not understood what I'm telling you. I meant something different. It's just your understanding. It's like, for example, people always just assume. If I were to just remain silent for a minute, not do anything, what will happen? Each one of you will just try to bring own reason. Why did he remain silent for 1 minute? Was he thinking he wanted to drink water, or maybe he lost his thoughts, whatever, right? Everybody will say, oh, his own meaning. So Imam said, just tell him that if the author tells you that what you have understood is not correct, then what will you come? What would be your reaction to that? So the student said, yes, Sayyidina Rasulullah, when we go back to our teacher, we will mention this thing. They come to Shaykh Al-Kindi, and when they find an opportunity, they in fact convey those 2 points to the teacher. And the teacher said, because he was also a thinker, he just started thinking deep in his thought, and just he raised his head and said, tell me one thing. Who has taught you these things? Who has taught you this way of arguing? He said, no, these are our own. He said, no. You are our students. We know your limit. I know your limit. Tell me who has taught you. When he insisted, they said that, no, Hassan Al-Askeri ibn Ali salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. He has informed us this thing. And Shaykh Al-Kindi said, indeed, this can only come from the house of the Prophet. Immediately he ordered that bring those pages which are composed till now, and he burned them, all of them, there and there, realizing that what he was thinking is contradiction in the Quran that's not the case. But the point here is, my brothers and sisters, that Imam was fully aware what was happening. In spite of being in the prison and house arrest, you'll find, and this is which each and every Imam, that our Imams, the way they led their lives, in spite of facing so many opposition, and for example being imprisoned, and the enemy will always try to come in the way, they could not frustrate the Imams. Imam used to continue with their work. So here it was something that somebody was trying to write a book in the time of Imam. Imam knew about it, and Imam also taught the students how to go and approach this thing. And this is about knowledge. But even sometimes something which is not known to people. So often, for example, the Imam used to live during his Imam time, there were 3 Abbasi Caliphate. First was Mu'taz, then Muhtadi, then Mu'tamid. Right? These 3 Abbasi Caliphate came. Each of them, in fact, Mu'taz and Muhtadi, they just lived for a year only about. Their Khilafah did not last long because there was a lot of turmoil within the Abbasi Khilafah during that time. But each of them tried to prison Imam and come in the way. So Mu'taz or Muhtadi, one of them, gave the order clearly. He called his servant and said that take this Abu Muhammad to Kufa. And whilst we are taking